I think I inherited a demon from my ancestors. It's almost nothing like pop culture explains, but as far as I can tell, it seems to follow an arbitrary set of rules and seems to honor agreements. The way that I found out about this demon's non-fictional existence actually took me years to piece together, so I'll start from the beginning. Maybe that'll help someone make sense of it all. Sleep paralysis. That's where things got wild. Well, wilder. Though it's fair to say I'd had plenty of horrific nightmares before that point, these episodes of terrifying wakefulness in the dead of night were marked by two things. The complete immobility of my body and voice, but that goes without saying. As it does for most people, my sleep paralysis would come on without any warning. The second certainty? It always appears as roughly an approximation of neon wavelengths, in the crude but geometric shape of a spider. Other features were visible and more akin to an exotic but no less soul-rattling real spiders. Perhaps a Freudian nod to my arachnophobia, or so I once thought. During these little slices of altered consciousness, these sleep paralysis demons would arrive, jerking and skittering out of the unbroken surface of my ceiling. They would pulsate and grow in intensity as they drew closer. They would always advance closer and closer, undulating rhythmically as if they were dancing their way towards my face. No, dancing isn't the right word. It was far more frantic, more desperate, almost as if they were struggling to get to me, as much as I was struggling to get away, or even scream for help. As their journey towards my face halted altogether before reaching me, I would notice all the shadows of the room filling with twisted faces, groaning silently. The arrival of the faces always preceded the immediate egress of the demon spiders. I'll talk more about this a bit later. Okay, fast forward closer to present day, give or take a few years. A friend of mine who happened to be a trained, self-proclaimed guru told me,
"John, it seems like these spider spirits mean you no harm. I believe they are in fact higher beings trying to get your attention."
Though I didn't believe him even a bit. I replied respectfully, well, I appreciate your advice, but I'm not sure I'm ready to believe in this kind of thing. He laughed lightheartedly and said,
"John, I can tell by your aura that you are someone special, but you've always been too skeptical and, dare I say, too modest?"
Well, listeners, readers, I feel like I started a bit out of order here. Sure, it's a part of who I am, but please forgive this final detour further back into my childhood. I swear it's relevant for context purposes, and it'll make sense later on. So the first time anything out of the ordinary happened to me, I was probably around 5 years old. I say probably because I don't have very many clear memories from around that age. But I do remember the night terrors. I should tell you that I always remember my nightmares. They started months before I was assaulted and nearly kidnapped by an insane illegal immigrant. Vivid scenes of myself being abused and used by a stranger in ways too disturbing to put down words filled my head as I slept. I'll concede that majority of even my most pleasant dreams are forgettable, but the same can't be said of my nightmares. These seemed almost a warning to never go about the neighborhood alone, so I insisted on my older brother sticking around. The month leading up to the attack, I'd awaken, drenched and screaming, crying sorrowfully. Not a single memory of what caused these night terrors existed in my conscious adolescent mind. Aside from 2 sentences, I cried, "Please, I'm sorry," and "Don't let him get me." What little else I can remember is always being certain that these night terrors weren't caused by nightmares. The night before my attempted abduction was different. That night, I awoke to a scraping sound at my window. Before I even thought to get out of bed and allow my curiosity to get the better of me, my attention was drawn to the massive darkness near my window, swirling with faces of near featureless people in anguish, and a single pair of mesmerizing amber-colored orbs. It seemed to smile, and I don't know why or how I thought that, but it didn't seem to relieve me of the gripping fear coursing through my little heart. The obscured creature scratched a couple more times and then stopped. The air felt electrified for a moment, and then I saw movement from outside the window as something large slammed once into my window with enough force to shatter it. But it didn't so much as put a crack in the glass. Whatever had slammed into my window picked itself up and shouted in an unfamiliar language and ran away. The amber orbs widened as they gazed upon me, this time slowly extending what might have been a hand towards my face. I literally pissed myself as my father slammed my bedroom door open, not seeing the apparition evaporate a split second before turning on the lights. I found out later that they had found tool marks outside of my window, but stranger still, inside my room, they found strange markings and symbols etched underneath my windowsill. Years later, other semi-prophetic nightmares came. However, I have no recollection of any words or portents I might have cried. That is, up until I was around 12 years old, the year that I had experienced the first death in my family. And it was as if those memories had always been there. At the age of 12, my most favorite person in the world lost her battle with diabetes due to complications to multiple instances of gangrene. It was my grandmother, whom I always called Grandma. I know, it sounds pretty standard, but each grandmother in my huge extended family was given a different nickname. We had our Gigi and Mima and Grams and Grandma. Diabetes was the official cause for the onset of gangrene, but the circumstances were stranger than your typical diabetes-related death. According to my father, my now self-isolated brother had attracted foul spirits into my grandma's house. Sometime after he had gifted her a new pair of horseshoes, she found a razor blade in them after it had cut her. But you see, the cut never healed, whether because of her advancing diabetes or because of some dark magic at work. I couldn't tell you. What I can tell you is that she used to give me caramels, fresh strawberries, and a tour of her garden every time I visited her. In her eyes, I was a little angel. Now, it was widely known by most of my relatives that my brother dabbled in the occult, holding seances and collecting oddly titled books such as How to Summon, well, they were mostly nonsense anyway. Less known was the fact that my father had dabbled in the occult when he was around my brother's same age. And according to my father, it always ended poorly and in unsettling ways. In current times, I haven't seen my brother in years. He withdrew from me, becoming more distant from the rest of the family from the day he saved my life from that kidnapper. Oh, I've gotten off track though. Maybe someday I'll tell you the fully detailed account of peculiar events surrounding my grandma's death, or fill you in on other strange stuff my family went through. Anyway, sure, the amnesia-inducing night terrors stopped the year my grandmother died, but it was also the year my most memorable nightmares began. Always demons chasing me, sometimes catching me, year after year, month after month. As for what kind of demons? The type of hellfire and brimstone ones. Typically red of skin, sometimes gray or yellow. Some of them had white eyes, black, or even red eyes. My battles with them weren't always one-on-one. No such luck most of the time. Sometimes it was an array of demons, being torn apart and skinned alive, you know, the usual. On such nights, I was thrust into a picturesque hellscape, lovely fields of tormented souls, tortured by demons. That's sarcasm, by the way. A completely healthy coping mechanism with no downsides at all. Anyway, their demonic forms varied. Some almost human, others resembling beasts of myths. But always disgusting, always violent, supernaturally strong, and always looking to mutilate me. After 3 years of having such nightmares, around 1 to 3 times a week, I had had enough. I started fighting back, strangely able to alter many aspects of my nightmares. Many times I tried, and many times I failed miserably, always losing to their demonic speed durability, and strength. Until one afternoon, weeks after my 14th birthday, I came home from school to an empty apartment. Usually my mother or father would be home by this time, greeting me on my way in, but I was met by a note. It was in my mother's handwriting.
I'm going to be staying the weekend at your aunt's house, and your father is going to be working until late tonight. I made dinner, but if it's cold, just reheat it in the microwave. Love you, son. See you on Monday.
Nothing too unusual. At least Mom made dinner before she left, and I was getting hungry. It had been a rough day at school, and I was more tired than hungry, so instead of chowing down on an early dinner, I decided a nap sounded lovely. I plopped on the couch and closed my eyes. It was the strangest nap I'd ever had. I was thinking about meditation, although I'd never actually done it, so I decided to just try breathing. In just a couple of minutes, my whole body felt as if it were vibrating intensely, and I could see the blackness of my mind phase into a blurry picture. I heard a woman's voice, and the image began to get clearer, more stable as the vibration continued in the background. The image was that of a red-skinned, blonde-haired demoness. She had short, red skin-covered horns. She addressed me by name.
John, take the strength you need. Defeat your demons in combat. Our time together grows short. I exist in the mortal world, and you owe me.
Her message was cut short, and her image disappeared like a plume of mist. And the most unearthly sound came at me from everywhere and nowhere. I opened my eyes and bolted upright, heart pounding and feeling out of breath as if I just barely made it back to the surface of a very deep swimming pool. Ever since then, my battles with demons in my dreams never ended with me as the victim. Sometimes it was a draw, but I found that I now had the ability to turn any demonic nightmare in my favor. My nightmare battles stopped around my 18th or 19th birthday. That's exactly when I had my first instance of sleep paralysis, something I remained powerless to do anything against. Not long after the first terrifying, yet seemingly unremarkable occasion of sleep paralysis, I began to notice patches of darkness outdoors at night, as well as indoors, inside my home. Rather, began to notice them again. Had they always been there? Or did they come and go? At this point, it's just one thing after another. I remember wishing it would just stop. The feeling of eyes on me when I was alone. The shadows never feeling empty, all of it. I did my best to ignore it because, quite frankly, I didn't believe in any of it. So why should I have to deal with it? I don't want this. I just want a normal life, so kindly screw off, I shouted at the shadowy darkness. It must have listened, or I must have learned to ignore it. Either way, years went by and I never noticed it again. At the age of 20, I got married. Shortly after, I was injured while doing some freelance photography. I should say, re-injured. And I couldn't work or find a job that would take me in on my condition. The first injury happened in high school, during a parkour trick gone wrong. This injury, not too dissimilar from my first one, I fell into a deep depression. I was useless, or felt useless, and I got used to being useless. It was my mistake. After being married and unemployed for a year, 2 jobs came and went. Then, when I finally found a stable job, it was at that point fate had already decided it was too late to salvage the marriage. I wasn't the best husband. In fact, my best qualities were 1, staying faithful, 2, not being some physically abusive drunk, and 3, having a stable job. My marriage lasted for 4 years in total, and it had nearly become the most notable nightmare thus far. I'm not here to bash exes, so I'm not going to go into details why it was such a living nightmare for me, but suffice it to say that I was the one who walked away. Fine. I'll give in. In the span of 1 year, she had cheated on me 3 times that I was aware of. I forgave her every time, and every time she did it again. The 4th time was just before Christmas. And what a happy holiday that was for me, as I found another man's Christmas presents underneath my Christmas tree. The third time had broken me, leaving me a sobbing mess in the dark of the kitchen where she confronted me about my lack of manliness, now alone. The shadows comforted me, though. They blanketed me and told me in my own voice, "You're okay, John. You'll survive this. You'll be okay. I'm here for you." And with this new comfort and strength inside me, it gave me the power to, did you guess it? Forgive her. And the fourth time, well, as I said, I had the strength to move on. Or the strength to stay and become a monster. 4 months after leaving my soon-to-be ex-wife, 4 months of intentionally staying away from intimate relationships, my best friend Axel, whom I had moved in with, introduced me to a beautiful Asian friend of his. He told me, "I think it's going to be good for your mind and healing. Just talk with her. Get to know her. And for God's sake, don't rush into a relationship. Just chill and be friends." "Sure," I told my friend. "I'm not looking to be in a relationship yet anyway." Now, I said that, and it was true, but the heart pushes you steps further than you plan taking, for good or for bad. Fast forward a year, and I decided to move to Asia to build a new life with her. I'm still not perfect, but I improved leagues above the slob I used to be, and even finished my studies so I could teach English to foreign learners. As soon as I stepped foot in Asia, I found that my nightmares disappeared, as well as my sleep paralysis. The last thing that haunted me was the swirling pockets of darkness, brimming with haunting faces and agony, those which I found present in my environment no matter where I went, and were only visible when I was alone. I found work at a school in a different province than my girlfriend's house. Too far to commute daily, so I rented a small apartment within walking distance to the school. After taking a shower and eating a cheap dinner, I opened the door to my bathroom. As soon as I did, my attention was pulled to the bathtub, which appeared full of seething darkness, and I could feel eyes upon me. My heart started pounding like a bass drum as the darkness seemed to be growing, though it could have been my imagination. I fumbled for the light switch, feeling the darkness inches away from my face. Finally, the lights turned on. Again, it could have been my imagination. The stress of starting a new job I'd never done before, but I could swear it was as if the darkness moved into the solid wall. I washed my face, brushed my teeth, and headed to bed, closing the bathroom door, of course. Needless to say, I couldn't just fall asleep. I remembered some literature I read a while back, something about bloodline curses. The author explained, sometimes an ancestor of yours would dabble in the occult, performing a seance, ritual, or possibly mispronounce an ancient traditional rite. Whether trying in earnest or as a joke, regardless, whatever ritual they performed would occasionally connect with a genuine spirit, demon, jinn, or even angels, fallen or otherwise. Often, they'd strike a deal without discussing the cost of supernatural favors, resulting in an entity which anchors itself into your family, and by extension, to you. Due to the haphazardous nature of poorly brokered deals, it could be impossible to learn the full list of ramifications and possible loopholes to such deals. So wrote the author. I wasn't a firm believer in any of this woo-woo type of stuff, but this night, I was willing to try what the author suggested. No Latin, no selling of souls, and no sacrificing of any kind. Not even a crucifix, Star of David, or a Buddhist good luck charm in sight. I looked up from my phone, seeing that it was 3 a.m, my room awash with sentient shadows, and decided I was putting an end to this. I grabbed a salt shaker and sprinkled a thin line of salt all the way around my bed. I avoided letting my eyes linger on the concentrated mass of swirling shadows, doing their best impersonation of a rave in one of the corners outside of the salt line around my bed. I thought of how lucky I must be that I knew quite a bit about folklore and the occult. Steeling my nerves, I addressed the unseen entity, not even certain if there was such a thing, but I firmly told it to listen to me. Listen up, whatever you are. My ancestors made a deal with you. They did so without my consent. Leave me and my family alone. If you mean me or anyone in my family harm, you are unwelcome and forbidden to be within 5 kilometers of me and any of my loved ones. I felt silly, but the tension in the room was heavy. I don't know why I said what I said next, but it must have struck a nerve. You feed off of my fear, but what do I get out of this? I'm tired of this. I left the circle of salt. Yeah, I know, what an idiot. It's a damn good thing this wasn't a movie. I stepped with shaky confidence towards the corner of the salt line, not stopping until I was at the edge of the darkness. Out of the corner of my eye, I noticed that a street lamp outside flickered a bit, and that the light it shone through my large bedside window followed a clear path to this corner, but didn't illuminate it at all. It was too late for second thoughts. I stepped past the corner into the horror. It's yet another moment I look back on with wonder, at the sheer magnitude of stupidity I displayed that night. A warm wave hit me, swirling around me. A wave of what could only be described as an electrified blanket of countless grabbing hands. Currents of cold intermingled as this envelope of sensation undulated around me. I was speechless as I recoiled from its embrace and scrambled back into the salt line. I collected myself and managed to force myself to look back at the corner. And the shadows were empty, the light no longer distorting near it. Exhausted, I needed to sleep. But still I felt this creature's presence, merely further away than before. Calling on more lore and remembered literature from occult theory, I addressed the entity again. Not good enough, I told it. I fully intended to lawyer safe negotiations between us. I do not give you permission to harm me or my loved ones. I do not give you permission to gain sustenance unwillingly from me or my loved ones. Even then, the tension had begun to fade further. And if you wish to open negotiations, you must first materialize and appear to me. This action does not create a debt between us. If you agree to negotiate, then appear within or by the time I count to 10. And regardless of the outcome we choose, you must leave me and my loved ones alone unless called on. I'm tired of always being afraid. I don't want to feel this fear any longer. I'm not sure why I felt this would work. Odd moment to mention this now, but nearly everyone in my family had each their own run-in with demons or spirits. Laughably, I just thought they were all nuts, so just remember that I wasn't a believer before this night. I started counting. 1, 2, 3, 4. I hadn't fully reached the count of 4 when in the middle of my room, in the very center of where my eyes were focused, it materialized in a soundless blade of heatless flames. My eyes widened, and other than the top half being a distorted humanoid shape, everything else about this entity was practically indescribable.
Agreed. I'm listening.
Its voice rasped, as if its vocal cords were made out of charcoal, and it dematerialized just as quickly. I addressed it a final time. Another mistake in retrospect. If you wish to be helpful to me and my loved ones, you may stick around, but never maliciously cause physical, emotional, or spiritual harm to me or those I call my loved ones. I said with what I hoped was a respectful tone. The tension of the room cleared. No malevolent presence, no unnatural shadows. Rumbling and deep tremors shook my apartment, and the lights went out for the whole neighborhood. Well, do you agree or not? I shouted into the pitch-black room as it continued quaking, knocking things off shelves, but no answer came in reply. Only a moment of dreadful suspense, stretching onward, filling every available nook and cranny of my being with uncertainty, and a non-zero amount of panic. Flames danced as high as the ceiling, then subsided without leaving a mark. There it stood, grinning.
Johnny boy,
It called mockingly, stepping out of the gloom, looking like a fresh nightmare and giving off its own illumination. The demon magically lifted me off of my feet with a simple gesture of its black clawed hands.
I agree. And seal this deal with a kiss.
It brought me close, and I shut my eyes tight. As its lips pressed hard against mine, it vanished. I slammed against the wooden frame of the bed, falling halfway onto the metal frame. Seconds later, after the pain had subsided, the rumbling stopped, and so did my own tremors, which I hadn't even noticed before. I'm not really sure what I just agreed to. I only know that I never saw shadows full of unnatural darkness again. Nor have I seen or experienced anything maliciously supernatural in 4 years. There is another thing. 4 whole years, and I haven't been afraid even once. If that entity was real, or just a stress-filled hallucination, the old me would tell you for sure it had to have been a nightmare. What else I can tell you at this part is pretty strange, though perhaps more scientifically explainable. Whenever that entity left, it didn't leave empty-handed. It took something from me. Not my soul or anything like that. It took away my fear. I felt it leave my body. After that, I found that I could no longer feel direct fear. My arachnophobia was gone. My fear of the dark? Gone. Fear of clowns? Gone. It's as if I lost the ability to feel deeply afraid of anything. Now I can't help but wonder sometimes, did that demon, or whatever it was, leave me with its blessing? Did it leave me and my family for all time? Maybe it'll occasionally be minimally helpful until the day I die. Something else to consider, perhaps my future grandchildren are at risk of coming into contact with it. Oh well, it's not like the thought scares me, although if it was still around, I think I'd be to blame if my future children or my children's children inherit it. That thought doesn't scare me, though it does make me angry. So quick vocal blog update here. I'm recording this to warn against those of you who might have also inherited demons. This is something for everyone who has ever witnessed a demon, and those that are still skeptical. I know what I'm about to say may sound crazy. Sometimes I feel like crazy is all that's left. But if you want no part of the supernatural world that creeps behind ours, now is the time to cut your losses and walk away from this story. I appreciate your company up to this point, but if you continue listening, you may learn some things about this world that even I sometimes wish I hadn't. If you decided to keep listening, I thank you for your continued company. Now, it's been around 1 year since my first-hand semi-conversation with my family's demons. Less of a conversation, really, more of a contract. I'm going to be retelling from here on out. So for days, maybe weeks after the event, I thought that I had hallucinated the whole encounter. And before you ask, no, I wasn't on any drugs. Anyway, I confirmed my demon's existence about 2 months after my first encounter. It's safe to say that not everyone believes in demons or angels. And yet, more often than not, it's those who believe in them that tend to see them. In my experience, anyway. I was walking to my local coffee shop, the only shop within miles or kilometers that had never burned my coffee. I was halfway across the street when I felt a claw-tipped hand close tightly on my shoulder and pull me back a step. A car roared past me, barely missing me. "Learn to drive, a-hole!" I shouted after the car. That's when I heard a chuckle from just behind my left ear. "It's you! I thought I'd gotten rid of you! Just what the hell do you want?" Again, the demon laughed.
You almost died, and yet you muster anger towards your deliverer. How rude.
I ignored the demon and walked up to the shop. "Hi, Fred. Hi, Sarah. Can I get the..."
The milk is spoiled. Ask them to check it.
Blurted out the demon. Not wanting to look like a nut, I silently hoped I was the only one who could hear it. Can I get the usual? Well, make it an extra large." And do me a favor, can you check the milk's expiration date? Thanks. Fred gave me a puzzled look, but smiled and said, "Yeah, sure thing." I walked to the register, feeling the demon steps in time with my own. I reached for my wallet. "That'll be $3. I had just put the money on the counter when Fred came to the register and gently pushed my money back towards me. He said,
"Look, Sarah, John just saved our asses."
He whispered just loud enough for the three of us to hear. "What? What happened?" Sarah asked, slightly alarmed.
"The milk? It's all spoiled." And he reminded me to check. "We're lucky everyone ordered soy lattes before." "Thanks, John."
They both thanked me and I got a handful of fresh coffee coupons. This was almost enough to brighten my mood. Almost. And yet, here I was being stalked by a demon. I found a secluded area in the coffee shop, put on my headphones, and acted as if I were speaking with someone on my phone. "Hey, thanks for saving me from getting run over. Oh, and thanks for the coffee. What can I call you, besides demon?" The demon appeared in the seat before me. Its form blurred and twisted below the neck, and the only features I can make out was its mostly human face.
"You may call me COALCIFER. Your ancestors had less manners than you, John,"
COALCIFER said with a grin. I replied, "Well, now that you're done hiding in the shadows, what is it that you want from me?" Its grin changed to a smirk.
"What do I want? For you to live a long and healthy life."
I laughed. I couldn't help but laugh. Here I was, talking with a demon who had given me its name, and it tells me that it wants me to live a long and healthy life? That's rich. What happened to you being Mr. Scary? Hides in the shadows and gives little boys sleep paralysis. The lights of the coffee shop flickered, and the song coming from the shop's radio hissed static briefly.
"Two things, Johnny boy. One, it's Miss COALCIFER, a fallen angel, not a demon. And two,
I never gave you sleep paralysis. I saved you from that which causes sleep paralysis."
I was practically shook. What? First, you're a woman. An angel? And second, what? You mean to say you saved me from something that causes sleep paralysis? Her once distorted form shimmered and came into focus. The red horns on her head were gone, and her once black irises now shone a smoldering amber color. She was breathtakingly gorgeous. Her blonde hair fell past her shoulders, down to her completely nude, semi-divine body. I blushed, immediately bringing my eyes to meet her gaze. Wow, don't you have any clothes? I started, until I realized this was the demoness from my dreams. The same one who gave me the power to fight demons in my nightmares.
Aw, Johnny boy, you do remember me. How sweet. You were but a boy when we first met, and a young man when we met more carnally in your dreams. I reached out 3 more times to hint I was still with you, but contacting you directly again would have put you in undue danger.
What COALCIFER was telling me, I started to remember. Within 2 years after our first encounter, my father told me about COALCIFER giving him a message from me. Unsurprisingly, he forgot after telling me. The year after that, my cousin Brian told me of his dream where COALCIFER was sending me her regards. Now, Brian remembered telling me, but grew a bit distant afterwards. Wait, so that dream where we... Look, I was 18. You know how teenage boys are, I replied, recounting the vaguely erotic dream I'd, encountered with her. She winked and leaned forward.
Indeed, and back then it was merely a dream. In the here and now, it could be much, much more, Johnny boy.
I did my best to keep eye contact, and was about to say something, But she interjected.
Anyway, you're a cat man now, though sadly that may change. Your girlfriend is in danger.
COALCIFER went on to explain why some demons follow certain bloodlines, attributing its demon blood, the blood of fallen angels, flowing in the veins of certain families across the globe. She continued telling me that souls are rarely made, but in my case, it was quite an old one.
We were even frequent lovers once upon a time, around 1,000 years before your current life. You see, fallen angels and demons don't usually want just any soul. They want the soul which they resonate with the most.
She whispered in my left ear, now suddenly behind me. I don't know what to do with that information, I said, feeling a strange mix of disgust, curiosity, and longing. Look, will you just tell me what's gonna happen with Sandy? I almost shouted, earning me a worried look from Fred and Sarah. I smiled weakly and gave them a thumbs up to show them I was fine.
Creatures, not unlike those I protect you from, have honed in on her soul. They have their own agenda. You see, Sandy's soul shines like an immense beacon, and it's just simply irresistible.
COALCIFER went on to explain that these creatures likely wanted to consume Sandy's soul, and that they were older than any demon and greater in power than most archdemons and angels. Positively thirsty as I was after properly conversing with COALCIFER, I guzzled my coffee and headed home to get my car. There are a few places I need to go, and quite a few supplies I need to gather. Iron, silver, sea salt, chalk, rosemary, grave dust, and consecrated olive oil. After a few hours, I arrived home, and with COALCIFER's help, we began crafting and filling a small blank book with a list of arcane and infernal spells. I have a very long, twisted path ahead of me, and if I'm ill-prepared, it will prove so much shorter than I would hope. Thanks for accompanying me. Stay in touch, and wish me luck. John. Hello everyone. If you made it this far, thank you for sitting all the way through. First off, I wanted to say a special thanks to the author of this story, Stoic Dream Venture. If you like this story, you can check out other great writings from him on his Reddit. Additionally, thank you Eden from EdenReads for bringing us the voice of COALCIFER. You can catch more stories from Eden on her YouTube channel as well. Also special thanks to Sam White for providing his Fallen Angel art piece to this project. He has a ton of great art on his Twitter and Twitch, and highly recommend him. And a special shout out to Monster Music, who provided some of the music pieces for this story. He has some great creepy music on his YouTube channel and deserves way more attention. All these great artists can be found in links in the description below. So this is a big series that we're working on, and if you'd like to follow with the latest updates, then be sure to hit that subscribe button and that notification bell. So, thanks again guys, and I will see you next week.